my challenge today? Oh, making the extraordinary possible. I don't know, I just get on with life. It's about living it, isn't it? And it was quite a nice reflection putting this together about what I do day to day and how we challenge norms, enabling us to do more. And the background of that being a lot about mindset and actually the legacy for me of the Paralympic Games that started here, this whole impact of the view of someone that sport could increase independence. And I feel like I'm living proof of it. What I'm able to do because of how I challenge myself is far more than I would have expected when I left Stoke Mandeville Hospital 15 years ago. But I have to acknowledge that event that's just happened over the last couple of weeks. They were the best Paralympic Games ever. They have challenged mindsets and what is socially acceptable. I think it's, I've been to 4, as you kindly said, one of the more experienced, also known as one of the old buggers in the team. But to acknowledge the impact of the Games coming home, the impact that has both within this country and worldwide. One of the goals of the Games was that we change mindset towards disability around the world. And it's about now finding ways for people to be fully integrated. The village in the Olympic Park, someone asked me the other day, oh, have they changed all the rooms for you? No, they just built the village, built all that accommodation in the first place with the mindset that it just needs to be accessible to all. So we don't just have the ground floor accessible and then silly building regulations on every other floor that has no lift to, but plug in height up here somewhere for all the electricity points and light switches random places, because that's what's accessible. Being able to get to every floor, being able to not have a little lip on every piece of flooring that you have around the place. So that, you know, that's just a trip hazard for an elderly person, forget making it wheelchair accessible. So suddenly if we can change this mindset about what is accessible, and that if we can include all in just, it doesn't cost anymore if you do it in the first place. It starts to cost when you have to rebuild a room, when you have to change something. All they've done down there is build new accommodation that will be sold to the general public. They just put a seat in the shower, which means I can use it. And they thought about it and didn't put one in that's about the size of an A5 piece of paper, which you find in so many hotels in this country. I think it might be my next job. Sensible accessibility rather than token gestures. Because for me, those token gestures are what keeps the barriers. People say they've done it, or they say it's expensive to do. Let's just change the mindset generally, and I think the Paralympic Games as a whole, and especially these ones where they came home and they said, look at us, aren't we great? I found it interesting, feedback over the last few days, having come home from people, has been one of, the coverage kept going on and on about the classification. Well, great, because people need to understand that. But actually people's mindsets had already changed. They didn't need to know the classification systems because they just got it as being people doing the best in their sport, and that there was something equal going on in how people were divided up. And I think that's a mindset change for us in this country. Suddenly we don't need to understand what exactly is going on in how someone's body works or doesn't work, to be able to acknowledge and sit there and cheer David Weir's 4th gold medal like he can hear you if you shout louder over TV. I love 3A's advert for that one. I feel like I should take a step back and just give you a little bit of my background. Like we said, that was Paralympics #4, so there's quite a big history in there. And in 1997 I had a horse riding accident. So at the age of 18, mad sporty, active young girl, so hence still mad sporty, slightly older girl now. I had a horse riding accident. I thought he was going to go one side of the tree and the horse changed direction at the last minute, and I took a glancing blow off my head, so the force of the stop caused me to dislocate my spine, and it severed my spinal cord. That was half an hour away from here, so I was one of the lucky people that come straight to a spinal unit and don't actually have to deal with that being in a general hospital and not having that specialist treatment. So I was flown straight here and went straight into the spinal unit. As a paraplegic, my stay there wasn't as long. I stayed in the hospital for 4 months. I took that challenge of it typically takes 6 months, and it's slightly team, I went, what's the quickest time anyone's ever done it in? And that was my challenge to myself. How quick can I get out of here, but with that independence, with that ability to go and live life to the full? And I think the mindset that's sat behind my rehabilitation, the mindset within the spinal unit, you have a support team around you who are providing the different areas that you need. We heard that earlier. And for me, it was about challenging that and getting as much as you can and have the right people around you. So that whole thing about I was in the right place, it might have been the wrong time, but actually it was the right time because I needed to be there. Those people enable you to do that. And I was thinking back, I was wondering what technology supported me at that point, and I'm not sure there was a huge amount. But things like looking at the chair design, the development of that, things like that have really influenced me and my independence. But at the time it was about the psychology of it actually, and the mindset that sat with it. That ability to focus on what is possible rather than what is not. And I think that also came from the support team around me. Now that may be friends and family, but it was also professionals with the attitude that what is possible and the opportunity in the situation rather than looking at what you can't do. So for me, I'd severed my spinal cord, there was no chance of getting any of it back. But the people that came to visit me came in and told me what I could do, what is possible. And I think my mindset anyway made me see the opportunity in the situation. Right, what am I going to do? Actually, within days of my accident, I realised how lucky I was. You realise that you're surrounded by people who are on a ventilator for the rest of their life. I hit my head on a tree trunk, and actually I only broke my back. I think I'm lucky. So from that point on, it was what can I do with this? I'm going to push myself out of here. I'm going to be as independent as possible. And things like goal setting helped me at that time. I didn't know the theory behind it at the time. What I knew was that I had to find ways to focus, and when you can't push very far or stay in your chair very long, all those things are stuff you're trying to overcome. I found ways of setting myself little challenges. That slightly competitive spirit I have, might be why I'm sat here in London 2012 here, helped me in that moment. That ability to know how many bricks there were up the ramp outside the spinal unit, so every time I went up it, I had to go one brick further before I took a rest, because then at least I'd got some achievement. And I've continued to use things like that. I now know that there's a great theory about focusing on the process, that supports me with my sport, but helped me so much at that point. And the people around me, the ability to set goals and challenges that you're aiming towards. What do I need to be able to do to get home? I always find it funny that people took pictures of me at that time. So there we are in the high dependency unit with MRSA, glandular fever, and a broken back, because you may as well get it out while that way when you're in hospital. So the hardest part of my rehab, and if we're talking about technology here, the most basic of basic, your horrific, heavy wheelchair that you first put in, that it's something I say to people now when they look at the chair I'm in today, they go, is that your sports chair? No, this is just a wheelchair designed for living life in, not for making you more disabled. Because that's what that is. That doesn't give you independence, that doesn't make you feel like you're going to be able to go and live an active and full life. Makes you think, how on earth am I and my family and friends, who are all going to have to support me with this, going to be able to do that, because this is just crazy. And now my boyfriend picks me up in one arm when the lift is way too slow and there's 12 Chinese basketball players that you can't be bothered to wait to go up and down the lift. Picks me up in one arm, the chair up in the other, and down 10 steps we go. Because actually, to me, that's the independence of this technology and this change in technology, is that it does make you independent and you're able to work with other people in your independence. For me, that change in technology, which I feel is driven in a lot of ways through sport, and the development of elite basketball chairs and elite sports chairs, that's constantly looking for that lighter way to do something, that easier way to do something, that performance enhancer that then transfers into your everyday life. So yeah, that was the first year of my life, post-rehab. From, I think that's about 2 weeks in, to a year and 2 weeks later, I'm actually playing for Great Britain at the World Championships. For me, sport was an enabler. I was a crazy sports person, and breaking my back wasn't going to stop me. playing sport in the future, and therefore for me, it just gave me a focus. And we're now 14 years after that first appearance, and I'm just gutted and disappointed with how we finished in London, because it forgets the, I've had to ground myself in the last week actually by reminding myself that life can be so much worse than it's only sport. Unfortunately, when you've done it for 14 years, it's not only sport, it's your life. And that there are people worse off than you. But those things that surround that part of my lifestyle, driven by mindset. And I use this slide quite often as my what you can't do in a wheelchair, and so this whole attitude thing. And I think this links so closely to the innovation that goes on within providing equipment and just the technology that sits alongside us. So the giant bungee swing, I'm loving it. The girl that can walk is hating it. Being chucked out of my chair by a rather large American girl. I lived in Italy for a year playing basketball professionally after the Athens Paralympics. And the club I played for didn't pay very well. Their sort of money ran out a few times, and that was when money ran out, so we got on picked olives. Don't sit under a tree when you're picking olives. You wear a lot of them. This one I call Even the Romans Were Wheelchair Accessible, the Colosseum in Verona, for my Italian friends in the room. I fit perfectly in the animal entrance, if you can see that behind me. And the accessible part of the Great Wall of China. So when we talk about changing mindsets and how we innovate and do things differently, now I know when they built the Great Wall of China, they weren't thinking about the Disability Discrimination Act and those type of things. We got there that day, and this thing about independence and that ability to accept help when needed to be able to do things. I'm the most independent person you'll ever meet, and everyone calls me bloody independent. Hey, it's not. I can get my chair quicker than you can. So why am I going to sit around and wait for you to do it for me? But this, there we go, Great Wall of China, sorry, I was one picture behind. We got to the top of this insane ramp that had the biggest cobblestones you've ever seen. And we had to take it home to go up there. We wouldn't have made it to the top. I think a little bit tired from basketball, but this is when we finished competing. We got to the top of the ramp and we're at one of the turrets, and I look right and there's 8 steps, and I look left and there's 8 steps. And the guy goes, and this is the Great Wall of China, ta-da! No, I've come to see the Great Wall of China, I've not come to see the inside of a turret. So when our physio team manager had gone 3 turrets that way and come back down again, the mindset of the people, the mindset of all of us was that was not enough. So the combination of funny walking, carrying, bits of chairs being transported in different ways, and pretty scared looks at the people around us who didn't know what on earth was going on. 6 of us got 3 turrets in the other direction, because we all had that mindset of what is possible, that it's a barrier to be broken, it's a thing to push over, that bit like that 4 months in hospital. I'm not going to take 6 months, I'm going to do it as quickly as I can and push these boundaries, because what is possible. And so that whole thing about when you're designing technology, when you're creating things to enable living, what is possible, actually is that limiting your belief of what someone can do. I put these photos in because I like them. But also, one of the proudest moments of my life, I was way more emotional doing that than I was competing at the Paralympic Games. I nearly cried halfway uphill carrying this torch. And it was interesting because I so wanted to just carry it. I wasn't going to be pushed though. And they gave me one of the uphill sections. And it just would have been a pain. So that ability to go, you know what, I am prepared to put it on a holder, to push up this hill and just enjoy it. But interestingly, the mindset that sat alongside that by a policeman running next to me was everyone else who did it was being told, you can't walk, you must run, go quicker, we've got to keep on time, go quicker. About halfway up my section, they went, well done, you're doing really well, keep it going. Do you need any help? I said, you do realise I'm going at this pace because I want to enjoy it and take every second that I can. And I'll keep going if you want me to. They still have that residual mindset of pat you on the head, well done, just because I was in a wheelchair. I was looking at these guys going, you do know I'm fitter than all of you, don't you? It's when people still come up to me and say, oh wow, that was amazing having watched the sport. I don't think I could even do do that. Well, I hope you can't, because I train 6 days a week, twice a day for it. Oh, no, blooming heck, what are you thinking? But what is possible? How far can we push ourselves? I actually put these photos up to show you the technology. The technology of my chair. This is, I think, day chair number 5 that I've had since I've been. And it's the best one I've ever had. And it's the best one I've ever had. And this is going to possibly sound because I designed it. And no one got involved and interfered with going, yeah, but you've got to have room for your winter coat, which was wheelchair number 1. And I think wheelchair number 3, they went, oh, you know, that might be a bit narrow. This chair helps me. It's not dangerous, but that ability to know what's best for you. I have way less back problems. I don't sit on a pressure relieving cushion because that causes scoliosis. The ability to take control, work with someone and say, how am I going to create something? This is performance technology, but this is performance for day-to-day life. I don't need to see my physio as often. It didn't cost any different than the last chair. It's just I was able to take control, partly because I missed out parts of the route. But this obsession with worrying about the health and safety that gets in the way of enabling performance for people. And it might be, I'm trying to be a bit controversial here, and I'm pushing some of those boundaries, and I'm saying, come on guys, ask the patient what is needed, what is possible. How lightweight can you make something so that electric chair for that guy who's on a ventilator doesn't prevent them from doing stuff because it's so hard for other people to get around? How can you push these boundaries that enable performance? And that's what this chair does for me. My scoliosis has improved because of this chair. Suddenly I'm sitting straighter. Suddenly I need less care because the technology that's supporting me, that's made by the same company that made my basketball chair, which is designed for performance, which has brought out a chair now that weighs about 8 kilos. In fact, I'm not sure it's not too light because I keep falling out of the thing, which you can see in the next picture. I spent a lot of London 2012 looking like that. But this ability, this chair is one that they designed, and they're trying to cut everything out of it. They're trying to create it, and what will happen is in a year or two's time, it's a bit like Formula One and its impact on the car, general public's cars. Why do we have airbags? Why do we have anti-lock braking? It comes from Formula One. So let's be Formula One, and let's bring it into day-to-day, and have that mindset. How can we be innovative? How can we change things? I will sit down with the manufacturer and say, I wanted to do this, or this is a problem for me. Could we adjust this? Could we adjust that? And the elite performers are starting to push those boundaries for what is possible. And that's the mindset that enables this independence and this pushing forward, and living a life where I don't care what the access is like, because I will be able to cope with it in one way or another. And actually we're changing society's view so it's just accessible. And that's okay. I put these in, I guess, to link that in. I was so privileged. One, I was in the closing ceremony, and two, this is my pictures from the parade around London this week. On Monday, over 1 million people out cheering on the Olympic and Paralympic teams as they were paraded through London, the day after their closing ceremony of the Paralympics. Yeah, over 1 million people apparently. And I laugh because they're all taking pictures of us, and I'm taking pictures of them because I think it's amazing. But how we link these things up, people watch the Paralympic Games with this attitude that it was elite sport and it's pushing the boundaries, and not our bless. I really don't think, and I didn't hear it, I wasn't out there, but we had the same criticisms in the press, we had the same reaction to it, we had the same acknowledgement. No one actually cared what was going on with why has he got one leg and he got two, and they're running against each other. It's okay, it's just elite sport, and we're going to accept it in that way. So when we're looking at ways to push these boundaries, what is sport doing? The technology that we use within our training, the training techniques that we use. I always wonder how many of those, if I'd had them when I was doing my rehab and the spinal unit, would I have gained more and had more core function? We use Pilates. I've adapted it with Pilates instructors and physios over the last 5 or 6 years. So you have assisted movement, which means I can do a sit-up even though only part of my stomach muscles work. But I can do it because the spring supports me, takes some of my weight, suddenly you're getting every millimetre of function out of your body. The fact that we use things like Compex, which is a muscle stimulant, we use it for recovery, because you can give yourself a massage on your arm, although it looks a bit weird when your hand's shaking like this, when it's attached. You can also use it when you're training in the gym. I'm stronger on my left side than I am on my right. But is that because I've just forgotten how to use my right? And actually, by stimulating those muscles externally, your body remembers how to use them. Now that's almost, to me, that feels like we're going back and using the technology that would have been used for incomplete patients in spinal units previously, and I've seen that used. But we're suddenly using an elite sport on functional muscle to gain more. You will see Olympic athletes using technology like that on functional muscle to recover, to gain more, to get equal movement, to train the movement patterns. And we train alongside them. And so these pushing the boundaries and new technology and what's going to improve us, how can we bring that back into the healthcare system? How can things like that, well, how would that have helped me? Actually, if I'd been able to engage my stomach muscles more, to every millimetre I have, which is what I've been able to do over the last few years, is what would that give me at the time with my core? How would it have helped my spine? How would it have prevented all those years of needing physio on it? Because I'm twisted, because I'm functioning better one side than the other, and I get more spasm in one than the other. But when you're in the gym and you've got the Olympic canoe team watching the wheelchair basketball team training and saying, how are you doing that? What movement are you doing? Because that's the movement we need. Suddenly this change is elite sport, it's pushing the boundaries, but canoeing are prepared to look at wheelchair basketball to learn lessons on how to use your core and training functions. And the McLaren Formula One team that comes in a couple of times a year and trains at the English Institute of Sport with the same coaches we do, watches your training session and goes, that's the movement I do to put the wheel on the car. And I'm talking about them being innovative and leading, and they're looking at wheelchair basketball and saying, that movement you do, I need to get stronger in that and quicker in that, because a split second quicker helps my team. And those are the crossovers of knowledge that are going on within elite sport. And how do we bring it back now that using a complex and muscle stimulations for complete injuries? So I'm never going to get anything back below my belly button, because there's a bit of spinal cord that goes that way and another bit that goes that way. I did a really good job. You are allowed to laugh at that bit. But how does that then come back in? What would I have gained more by getting every millimetre and using technology for that? And we use video analysis, and we have ways of tagging our videos so you don't have to watch the whole 2 hours of the game, but you can put together little clips by just saying, I want this bit, this bit, and this bit, by pressing the right button at the right time. And technology coming into it more and more and more, supporting the psychology which I talked about, that I gained so much from when I did my rehab at St Manuel. And I guess there's things about, it's interesting, this mindset piece that I have. I've got a teammate that, she's an amputee, so within wheelchair basketball you've got a classification system. I'm at the lower end, more disabled end. Your amputees and your minimal disabilities, so knee replacements and failed knee reconstructions can compete at that level within the sport. But actually, in a lot of ways, by being spinal injured, you get better treatment. I watch these colleagues, and one of our most talented young players, she's a through-thigh amputee due to cancer. She's 19 years old. She goes back to get her leg mended and gets told that, well, you just overused it, and we won't replace the knee joint for you because we've overused it. I'm like, in what part of this world is it okay to say that to a 19-year-old girl who's been stopped from doing PE at school because of health and safety? So comes into this sports setup where we throw her in at the deep end and throw balls at her face a bit so that she learns how to catch. But in what part is this okay? That it's because everyone's tied with the same brush, and actually if you use the equipment you're given, you're not going to be given any more and you wear it out. And then they talk to me about this latest knee and this, that and the other, and I'm going, wow, I didn't know this technology existed. But you can buy a flat cheaper than you can buy the latest amazing knee from Otto, which which they're telling me has this, that and the other. I didn't even know you had batteries in these, got all sorts. But where is this okay? And yet this mindset change that's coming in. My boyfriend sat on a train the other day and overheard this conversation, and I guess this is something I'm just going to leave you with. A little boy wearing glasses says to this other little boy, "I'm really short-sighted. I'm hoping I'm short-sighted enough to be able to play blind football." Because the reason they can play blind football is they do it very in visual impairment book, and where they're all blacked out, so they are all blind. And because of the Lexi system that Channel 4 had designed of this explaining disability, this slightly older boy responds with, "Well, what can you see and how can you see it?" and starts classifying this other lad. Could this be possible? And then he turns around and says, "Well, you see, I'd really like to run on those blades, so I'm wondering if they could cut a foot off." Now, that's one way to inspire a generation in my world. But I do have a problem when parents have a go at me and say their child has gone home from a session I run wanting a wheelchair for Christmas. But this is the mindset we're changing. And if we make it normal, we make it acceptable, and we start to be able to have Olympic canoeing, looking at Paralympic basketball and saying, "I want to learn from you," and therefore what directions do all of these things fly in? It's a fantastic mindset. We've inspired a generation, we've changed the mindset. I think we inspired the whole of all generations actually in what is possible. And finally, I just always finish things with this, because to me, I was given this before our first game in Athens, and there's this thing about how you take risks. You don't go blindly into a jump off a cliff and hope, but you work out a bit of calculated risks and you push the boundaries. I heard a lot from our performance in London because I put my heart out there and I said, "We're going to medal," because we're completely capable of doing it, and it didn't go right and it hurt the most it's ever hurt. But if you don't take that risk and put it out there and say, "I'm going for this, I'm really going after this, I'm going to change something, I'm going to innovate in a way." And that's what we do as athletes. We have to innovate, we have to find new ways of doing it, different ways of doing it, and it doesn't always work. If you take that risk and you push those boundaries and you dream up here, it's amazing what is possible. What I've achieved in the last 14 years, 15 years ago when I first had my accident, I would not have thought the majority of it was possible. And that's around how we challenge and innovate and find different ways of doing things. So I hope that's been useful today. Thank you very much, and I'll pass on.